Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us. For those who are just joining us, welcome to Mental Health Festival 2024. I am Devi, your MC for today's session. At Intellect, we are committed to making mental health care and well-being support accessible for all. Our goal is to empower organizations and individuals to prioritize employee well-being and create thriving workplace. I'm really glad to have all of you here to join us for today's panel discussion on future-proofing well-being, innovative strategies for 2024 and beyond. As we navigate a rapidly evolving work environment, the traditional approaches to corporate wellness are becoming increasingly outdated. Today, we are here to really explore how our cutting-edge strategies and emerging trends are really reshaping the future of workplace well-being. We are honored to have two of the most remarkable experts who bring valuable experience and insights in this evolving field. Let me now hand it over to our esteemed moderator, Cassandra Lu, VP of Partnerships here at Intellect, to introduce our speakers. Take it over, Cass.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you. I am beyond excited to introduce our speakers for today. We have both Dr. Vanessa Sun as well as Yvonne Lu. So I look after the Partnerships and Solutions team here. So these two wonderful ladies are our partners here at Intellect and work very, very closely together. And they are definitely at the forefront of corporate well-being. That's their day in, day out work. So we have Dr. Vanessa Sun, Wellbeing Leader, Mercer, Singapore. She brings over 20 years of experience in the field of mental health and human resource consulting. I love talking to her because she herself was a clinician, and so she definitely brings a lot of insights both from the corporate as well as the clinical side of things. So welcome, Vanessa. Thank you for joining us.
Wow, thanks, Cass.
And of course, we also have Yvonne. Yvonne and I go way back. We've known each other for a very, very long time now. Yvonne leads the client relations team in iXchange, which is a third-party administrator under the IHH umbrella. And of course, they look after their clients' physical as well as mental well-being, structuring the entire employee benefits for their clients. So I'm really looking forward to chatting with Yvonne as well. Hi, Yvonne.
Hey, hi.
Okay, now to kickstart everything, I think we want to make it a bit more interactive. So we do have a quick poll for the audience. So let's take some time for the audience to just share your thoughts in the chat box, everyone. What is one well-being initiative you wish your company would implement? So we are going to be talking about what the future of corporate well-being look like. We had really just a blank piece of paper. What is one well-being initiative that we hope we can see in our own organization? Let's give everybody some time to just really put their answers in. I see some responses coming in, so the world is your limit, sir. Anything. I think it'll be interesting also for our panelists to take a look at all of these. And I think it will structure our conversation later as well. Wow, okay, so I see, like, just reading a few that I can see here, free snacks or drinks in the pantry. So that's more of like the food, the nap pods. I saw something there. I saw more counseling and therapy sessions. Flexi health benefits. It's a big one for a long time now, I think. FlexiBen has been around for a while. More quiet corners, caregivers live. In-house psychologists, siesta pod, I guess, is nap pods, about the same. I actually have seen some companies with nap pods. I don't know what the utilization of those nap pods is, though. If any of you have nap pods in your office, let me know what the utilization is like. Okay, interesting. Okay, we'll give it another like 20 seconds just to take a few more answers. Sounds like 4 days work is also something that's very common.
I'd like to be working for the companies that these participants are putting in their wish list for.
Okay, great. All right, keep your answers going. some of these actually, in fact, in Intellect, we also implement, and if we have time, I would love to talk about, I think some some work better than the others, but we definitely have tried some of these as well. So maybe back to our panelists, maybe we'll start with Vanessa. Looking at all these answers, are these common trends that you are seeing, or what are the trends you currently see your clients asking for?
I think in terms of clients that have really impressed me lately, I've seen things like pantry snacks that are designed right for nutrition. So you can go into the pantry and you have different nutritional needs, whether you feel anxious or whether you're feeling tired or low, and you can choose right from a different shelf or different compartment, the different snacks that meet your needs. So I think that's really innovative, at least in Singapore. There's something that I don't see very often. So I'm very excited to hear, yes, snacks need to be there, and definitely well-being, but, hopefully more nutritious and more relevant snacks. Flex bands, I think it's definitely something that Singapore companies, like you said, right, has been coming up and taking up more and more. That's a great news for our company, our team. I think that we're really here to work with our clients to perfect this and to really make sure that strategies that are in place really work, right? Because it's not one size fits all solution, right? So I think that's really important to want to be innovative, but also really hear and really take a data-driven approach to things.
Thanks. And Yvonne, do you echo the same? Like, do you see the same kind of trend?
I think that a lot of HRs are also racking their brains in terms of what do I need to do to let the employees know that I'm taking care of them, that they're really appreciated. But I must say that not everything works. Even when I see companies providing Mercer, providing fruits in the pantry area, there will be little remarks that says that, I don't have that particular tea selection, it's not great. So we can't choose all, unfortunately, and management and HR shouldn't take a bashing and say that, I need to do better. But I think what HR can look into doing is to ensure that there is a very well balanced options, right, that you can look into. So it's not just about having goodies, which is nutrition, right? It could be having movement, which is providing some exercise. It could be volunteering, because that's also emotional needs. So I think that there's a bag of tricks that HR can look into, and employees hopefully will fit either one of the buckets.
And maybe for both of you, whoever wants to take it first, do you see a shift pre-COVID and post-COVID, or pre-pandemic and post-pandemic? I mean, I know pandemic seems like a very far away thing already, but because we look at trend, right? Do you see a different trend post-pandemic in terms of what your clients are looking for when it comes to well-being for their employees?
Absolutely.
Maybe, Vanessa, maybe.
Yeah, I think that, coming out of COVID, there were a lot of things in place that were, almost, okay, right, during the pandemic, what do we have in place? We don't have anything. Pull things from here, pull things from there, put things together, and, people liked it. And people had, I guess, the time to sit in front of a computer, do webinars, workshops, online yoga. That was all great. But I think coming out of the pandemic, they're looking for more. So they're looking for more that will catch their attention. Everybody's got meetings that they're, time strapped with. So I think they're looking for something different, something that's a bit more tailored, and something that will really be, bang for the buck. That's what I feel.
So it's no longer something surface, but more like personalized, would you say, for individual needs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then that's hard, right? Because, there's such a diverse range of needs within your company. I mean, if you do an analysis, you'll probably find multiple personas and groups, right? So how do you then, balance and cater for needs, as well as balance something that's data-driven, right? That's going to actually make a real difference in terms of health and well-being.
Sure. Yeah, and I think we want to dive into that a bit more later. Yvonne, any thoughts pre-post-pandemic?
I think pre-post-pandemic, I think the definition of health and wellness have evolved quite a bit. And even the format of delivery have changed, right? So healthcare used to be very clinically focused. So we talk about treating acute conditions and we talk about managing chronic illness. Now, especially with the post-pandemic, you see a big steer towards preventive and mental wellness, right? And that's where the format of delivery has also changed. During the pandemic season, you realize everything has changed to a more virtual landscape. And that's where the huge influx of, tech platforms, healthcare providers, mental wellness, came on board. But now, post-pandemic, you are seeing companies getting their employees to come back, whether it's full-time or flexi workspace. So the engagement model has also gone into more on-site. So companies are doing very well nowadays to adapt to a very good mix of online access to resources, being easily available and tips, as well as on-site physical interaction. So we see a very good mix whereby, the companies are also looking at the different portfolio and demographics of the employees, and they're saying the new gen loves to be engaged online, but the older generation or the big population would still like to be physically, socially engaging on the ground. So we see a very good mix where we have online as well as on-site engagement.
I think that's a good point, and that's a good segue to my next part, right? So maybe to Vanessa first. We had a lot of conversation on Mental Health Day 1, Festival Day 1 about tech. Is it helpful or is it too impersonal? Where do you see tech in specifically mental health, for example? Do you see it as something that's useful or, not really?
No, I see. I mean, it's definitely the way to go, right? We do need to move with the times. We do need to move with advancements. I think that it's something that can be leveraged very usefully in a lot of both strategies in terms of using data as well as in mental health and AI-driven tools. I think that we do as a community need to embrace this, but embrace this in a smart way, right? So also needing to balance between the human touch of things as well as embracing tech. So really learning how to make use of this and optimize, right, how the outcomes can be, rather than letting it take over or making our programs too impersonal or too tech-driven.
So it sounds like there needs to be a balance. You're saying that the tech does provide valuable data that helps us to shape even better, and I guess more accessibility for people who needs the tech solution, like what Yvonne mentioned earlier. But then there's always a group of people who need the personal touch, and we need to be able, the ideal solution should cater for both groups. That's what you're saying.
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, to balance, I think it's about understanding, right? While you have the tech there, how can you also put relationships first? How can you still put the human touch first? How can you make sure that you prioritize human connection, right? So if there's options between, let's go for the tech option, that has this outcome, and let's go for this person-to-person option. Maybe that's an option where you actually take a person-to-person option. I mean, I think I like the whole approach of having that integration. So like Intellect, right? You have your app, you have options for text chat, you have options for online coaching, but you have options for face-to-face as well. So I think that's going to be increasingly important, where you have that scalability, but you also cater for people who need that high touch.
Okay, and then I'm going to challenge you further, Vanessa. What about AI then? Is there space for AI in mental health?
Absolutely. AI is amazing, right? I think when we need to consider the whole spectrum, right? So, there'll be people who need more complicated or more complex help, more sensitive help, right? At the end of the spectrum, that's at risk or that is clinically unwell or that needs further help, right? But I think for the vast majority of us who pick up the app, who are having not so good a day, I think AI can be amazing in just listening to us talk about maybe rant, talk about some issues that we're facing, and then point us and signpost us to the right resources or the right directions. So it doesn't have to be a human right from the onset, right? Having said that, right, I was a therapist for many, many years of my life. I think that at the acute or at the, at the more serious clinical level, nothing really can replace the human touch in providing the empathy, that containment, that safety. But, I think these can be married hand in hand, and it can work very well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you. Like, I think AI does have a place to play, right, in making it more optimized, like you mentioned. But mental health, especially, is so personal. I think that's something that a bot will just not be able to relate. Just not the same level as what humans can do. Okay, shifting gears a bit back to Yvonne now. What about physical health versus mental health? That is another one that is a bit interesting to me also. You typically, I guess, before pandemic, a lot more focus was on physical health, like you mentioned. Now there's a bit more mental health. Are there clients who are looking at marrying the two together? And is iXchange doing something about it?
So interestingly, as a TPA, right, we do, have visibility into the various touch points of an employee population. And this is where it's interesting, right? If you can gather data from the primary care to the specialist care or even to the inpatient, you might be able to work out a scenario in terms of a risk profile, but more importantly, intervention programs that will be able to, target a specific group of individuals or, what's concerning the company. So talking about the various healthcare models and talking about how it's very important to have this linkage. If you look into mental health and physical health, like I mentioned before, pre-COVID, we're always talking about healthcare-related issues. Post-COVID, you started to look into more preventive and mental health. If I were to look into the mental health scene and landscape, you realize that before COVID, a lot of emphasis are on the EAP program, the Employee Assist Program, right? And this is where, and it's not even very prevalent among all companies. It's normally advocated by MNCs, usually those that have a very global initiative. And they are catered to the clinical aspects of mental wellness. The group of individuals that really need help, a psychologist, a counselor, a psychiatrist. Then post-COVID, you realize that mental health has taken a shift, with all the investment in mental health startups. So it steer towards the other end, which is the very raising awareness, preventive, keep you in check kind of a situation. And then you realize that maybe there's a gap, right? We cover the very initial phase before someone goes into a clinical aspect. We cover the very extreme case where someone really needs help. What about the midpoint, right? And this is where even with the government initiative like MOH, they are embarking on the mental health GP partnership program. And this is where the gap could be fulfilled, right? Where you have a GP clinic. When you are sick, it increases your absenteeism rate, reduces productivity. You go see a doctor for medication. Imagine that the GP could address certain of your needs and realize that you may need assistance, and they can direct you to the correct medical attention, whether it's a specialist, whether it's a counselor or psychiatrist. So I think a gap between preventive and clinical care could be fulfilled at the GP level. And that's where the MOH is also, involved in ensuring that they can plug the gap so that it can become a very integrated health care model for mental wellness. So I see that mental wellness, while it's about raising awareness, destigmatizing mental health and everybody becoming more aware, I think it is important to ensure that you have the next few steps, a GP network, a counselor network, a psychiatrist network, so that when you have employees who really need assistance, you have the available healthcare models as well. So I think physical as well as mental health goes very much hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I always advocate, right? If you create awareness with no access to care, then actually it's way more detrimental than not creating awareness in the first place, right? Because you bring awareness to people who then realize that they might need support, but then there is no access to support at all. So I think that's a really good point. I don't want to ignore the chat because people have been talking a lot about, more importantly, it sounds like beyond all the EAPs and all that, it is also transforming the workplace culture, which is important because a lot of our time is spent at work. And if the workplace culture is not positive, then we are just being very reactive in trying to provide a lot of support, but then the stresses are not, addressed. So have you seen any platforms or services that actually helps to improve the corporate, the workplace culture, so that it actually, goes to the root of the problem per se? Maybe we start with Vanessa.
Yeah, I think this is the case of what we're trying to shape the conversation towards. In Mercer, we have both the career side, we have our side, which is the health side. And I think we're coming together and realizing that, hey, when companies are asking for support for well-being, it's not just about benefits, right? It has to be a bigger ecosystem approach, right? So building things at every level of the organization, from leadership, involvement, advocacy, commitment, policy level, right? Flexi work, mental health leaves, anti-stigma policies, DI policies, even the built environment, right? Is it conducive for reducing stress, or does it produce stress? Then, of course, we have job redesign. I think that during day one, we had a speaker talk a little bit about that. How are jobs being designed, right? Are we working towards unreasonable KPIs? No meditation program can help with, being overloaded and having to work, crazy days, right? I think they're talking a lot about leadership training, manager training. I think that needs to be in place at that level. And then you have general education level, right? Where you're increasing the mental health literacy of the whole workplace, understanding why this is important, how to build resilience, how to achieve balance. And then you have that, the whole part about benefits, where you have your EAP, right? You have your peer support networks, you have your insured and self-insured healthcare, working with partners such as yourselves, as well as other healthcare providers and government organizations to support the ecosystem. And then, of course, you have to do the measurement, evaluation, ROIs, at the end of it, to keep making improvements to it. So I think it's both, having this ecosystem built up at each level of the organization, plus, right, within the support that you provide, be it benefits or healthcare, cater for the entire ecosystem, for the entire care continuum, right? So the ecosystem matrix with the care continuum.
Yeah, makes sense. And at Intellect, so what we offer beyond the platform, the counseling, the coaching, we also do a lot of trainings for managers, because what we hear from our clients is that the managers, a lot of them are first-time managers, or nowadays a workforce has like 5 generations, and a manager in the middle doesn't really know how to manage the different generations and the needs that they have. So all these trainings and coaching that we provide for our managers seem to be very well sought after, and people like it. So Yvonne, you are obviously a people manager yourself, right? Do you think the workshops or coaching would be beneficial in helping with culture? Because we see a lot of the people in the chat are talking about, it's beyond just providing access to care, it's also helping the workplace culture.
Yeah, and it's interesting with some of the chats, right? It's maybe I'll address the elephant in the room. So many a times everybody is thinking, so whose responsibility is it to drive mental well-being or just well-being in general? I think traditionally, which is still very true, is that the company should always take the first approach, right? Whether it's from the senior management, top-down initiative, because it always starts with policy, right? Only when you have a policy that is supported by the management, they have invested resources, invested funds to make it a real, a long-term initiative that is going to be sustained. I think this is where everybody, will ensure that once they start investing in well-being, things will move. So traditionally, it's always been a very top-down approach. But I realized that workplace culture is impacted both ways. So when the company decides to make an investment and do a top-down approach, I think that initiatives that work best many a times are bottom-up approach. Is when people feel excited. They have a group of friends that have got common interests, and we spend most of our working hours at work. right? And you realize that you're going to have colleagues of common interest, hopefully, or certain interest groups. So, for example, in iXchange, it's really interesting. There's a small group of individuals that decided to keep fit and start running. Right, so it has become a very weekly event. Started with 5 person, slowly expanded, not a huge number. And the community workplace group have decided to also, hey, start promoting a lot of the health promotion board activities that's for free, organized in the building. And you realize that this informal setting initiatives are what works best. It grows organically, right? It rubs off individuals. And this is where leadership, when leadership identify that, hey, there's some initiatives out there that is fun, that has actually created a lot of morale boosting, vibes, they should actually support. So, for example, the company gives extended lunch hour to cater to the 1 hour lunch yoga sessions. The company allows the employees to go off half an hour early, so when they go on their run, they can catch the sunset. Better still, there's an interest group that fits you. You should join as a leader. So it gives the employee population, the mindset that, hey, the management are really supportive. It's something fun that we have created, and they're joining us now instead of we joining their initiative. So I think the workplace culture is something that everybody needs to play a part, and it has to start with the management. And thereafter, hopefully you can find little ambassadors and champions in the company that can start a movement, and the management should jump on it and say, I'm fully supportive.
So it sounds like it needs to be both top down and bottom up. So I think top down is being sincere in providing really well-being. So it's not a checkbox where, okay, the trend is EAP, let's do EAP. Oh, the trend is this, health screening, let's do health screening. But to really go into what we really want to provide for our employees. Like I think, like you mentioned, having an extra half an hour, 1 hour of lunch so that the people who went for yoga actually can go for lunch shows that sincerity in saying, I'm supportive of this. And then bottom up in what employees really need, and taking that into account. Okay, that's really interesting. Great insight. Now we move a little bit into what we call the expert insights. This is like putting you in the hot seat already. I'm going to ask people to ask questions, but I have a few questions of my own that I wanted to check in, right, with you both. So maybe we start with Vanessa. So Vanessa, maybe one question for you is, there is a lot of people that's trying to do data-driven well-being, like insights. I know Mercer also had, your own insights, and curious to hear about that as well. But what is standing in the way of having proper data-driven well-being initiatives?
I think that, there can be cultural resistance in some of this, where, teams are used to doing things, by kind of like, okay, what's the other companies in the industry doing, or what's the next door company doing, what's available, what's cheap, what's free, right? And this has become, very, very, very common in the whole well-being planning kind of conversations, right? So I think that, there needs to be a little bit of a recognition that, okay, if we're taking a data approach, it really is about, analyzing, integrating the data that we have from many different sources, and taking a very step-by-step kind of systematic approach, right? Setting your goals, right? Putting in place your intended outcomes, and then identifying, right, what is the right program or the right activities and initiatives we should put in place to achieve these goals. And then decide on the KPIs. Because we've got lots of, companies coming to us and saying, hey, we're doing this and this and this. Help us measure KPI, right? And how come it's not working? And when is it going to start working? Yeah. But I think it's really, slowing the conversation down and going, okay, have you done, firstly, a needs analysis, right? A needs assessment. Understand what your people are really like. Have you done surveys? And then, right, let's look at your claims data. Let's look at your app data, right, utilization. Let's look at any other data points that you have, putting it together, and then we can start talking about, what the program should be looking like. So I think that step-by-step approach is something that not everybody is used to. And there's not a clear, strategy or a clear understanding or agreement, maybe within an organization about this, right? So it tends to be a bit like, this isn't working. Okay, we'll just default back to how we've always done things. And also to, I guess, to understand the ROI of a lot of things happens slowly, right? So you can see participation, utilization rates go up when you have the right actions, right? In terms of the right app, the right interesting things that people want to hear, and addressing their pain and pleasure points, right? But in terms of really making a dent, right, on the outcomes, be it resilience, absenteeism, presenteeism, productivity, that's a longer term journey, right? So year 3 and beyond. So I think that needs to be, I guess, repeated or understood throughout the organization.
No, thanks for that. That really makes sense. We do have questions that's identified for you, but I'll give you a break first. I'll move to Yvonne, because Yvonne, you and I mean, between iXchange and Intellect, we are partners in providing our solutions to your corporate clients. How important are such partnerships? Why do you value partnership maybe, and how does that partnership help your clients?
So generally, as a TPA, we work with insurance brokers, we work with direct clients, right? And many a times with the bigger companies, they tend to have their own resources on maybe a HR department, well-being, and that's because the bigger companies tend to have a headcount, and they're willing to put funding into it, right? But for the many mid-sized companies we see, I mean, it's not that they do not need, such services, right? It's just that given the size, they're going to have a bit more challenges having someone to focus on this real role. And hence, when we are their provider, where we touch point in all the GP specialist inpatient, and we see the data points and we work in recommendations, they come to us and say, what else can I do to engage my employees? What should be our focus? So different HR are in the, different stages of, their journey as well. Smaller companies tend to take I have to do it all, but I'm going to start small. So we do have services that we can provide companies with, whereby we help them engage their employees. And it can be from the very basic way, it's more healthcare related. Then it goes to the mental wellness, right? And it goes to maybe on-site events. So the partnership with Intellect is interesting because mental wellness was such a big topic of the day, right? And we predominantly have been working on the EAP programs with the bigger MNCs. So having the concept where, hey, we're doing more preventive, raising awareness, and then with that, it links into the EAP, spectrum. It is to us a no-brainer, right? And the whole idea is that we really want to make sure everybody are kept in check. They might have little issues. It could be a conflict, in the family. It could be work stress related that you just need someone to talk to besides your work peers. And this is where, going to an app, finding resources, having a chat, being anonymous, it helps in the overall receptiveness of someone willing to open up and chat about it. Even that itself is a very good start. So we decided that iXchange cannot be an expert of all things. And hence we work with our partners who are, subject matter expertise in their own area. So Intellect, having a great focus on mental wellness, is a very good fit, and that's also a value proposition that our clients are looking for. So whether companies are in the size of below 100 to more than 1,000, they've got different needs, and this is where we're able to work with yourself to say, where can you come in? What are the additional services that the client can have access to? So I can't do it all. Hence, I need to engage partners to be able to ensure that we are at various touch points, for the patients, for the employees, for the HR.
Yeah, and we appreciate that approach, right? Because we also don't believe in one size fits all. I think we need to understand the companies where they are at in this journey. Of course, very realistic things and practical things like the budget, the resource, all these needed to be taken into account. So yeah. Okay. I want to get to the questions here, even though I still have many questions, but I'm afraid that we don't have enough time to actually address some of the comments that we see here. I think, we spoke about a lot about culture because a lot of them are talking about, the culture of the company, the top-down, bottom-up, something that we have spoken about, and leadership coaching is probably a good idea, a good step forward. An interesting question that maybe, Vanessa, you can answer. Do you think mental health issues is contagious?
Well, not in the medical sense, right, where you can catch something, but a lot of emotion is energy, right? And if someone is coming, or a leader especially, right, is coming to their team and having issues of anger, sadness, consistently, right? Certainly this will trickle down, and people in the team will catch on to it. So it does become energy, it does become a vibe, it does become team culture after a while.
Sure. And so I guess it's not contagious in the medical sense, but definitely we do affect the people around us. I guess that's what you're saying. And the workplace that we work in definitely doesn't matter. Okay, a question for you again. Well-being is crucial for a thriving, high-performing workforce, and it's essential for organizations to help employees take accountability for their own well-being. In your view, what's the most effective way? Actually, I really like this, because even as a mental health provider ourselves, what we always advocate for at the end of the day is for employees to take their own accountability and ownership. We provide accessibility, but I think for real change to happen, it needs to come from within. And you need to take your own ownership and accountability. So I guess, Vanessa, either from a Mercer lens or as a clinician, what do you think?
Yeah. This is an interesting question, right? Because it's almost philosophical, and I'll share one thought on that, but I'll share other thoughts as well. I'll be quick, right? So I in my view, I really feel that, there is that whole approach of the company taking care of me, right? So there is that, like it or not, there is a power differential where you join a company, you're a full-time employee. The employer almost becomes like a parental role, right? Where they give you things that you say, yes, you do it, you behave well, you get incentives, you behave badly, maybe less incentives. So there is that power that companies have, right? So when you mention about providing accessibility, I think that's so important, right? Because you can't, if you have a teenager, right, you can't control their behavior, but you provide the right choices. Right, you guide them, you nudge them in the right things that they should be doing, and then you maybe incentivize them when they do the right thing, right? So, I'm drawing that analogy of parenting there, but I think that I do believe providing autonomy and shared responsibility. So things like, I know that a lot of insurance in the future might move to a more co-paying model, right? Co-sharing model, where people have to come up with part of it as well. That is sharing responsibility. But then how do we communicate the benefits, right? And the consequences if you don't lead a healthier lifestyle, if you don't manage your lifestyle? That is communication, right? So that can come through how we communicate to employees. Leadership role modeling can do a big part, right? So if the leader who is respected, engages in well-being and is a role model, I think that is something that will help. And then involving employees in decision making. So if you know that they are, key opinion leaders, get their input, get them to make some key decisions about the well-being initiatives. And then of course you have incentivizing, right? Where if people, set goals for themselves in terms of well-being and achieve them, then maybe they get points that they can redeem, or they get, extra leave days, etc., etc. So I guess there are different ways of doing that right now.
Yeah, makes sense. I think again, it's back to top down, bottom up, right? It's still where employees themselves still feel that they have the ownership to be able to make certain plans or decisions or initiatives on their own, and then equipping them with the ability to do so, and then after that, encouraging them to take that accountability.
Yeah. I think you said a lot of nudges. Yeah, nudges are good.
Nudges, yeah. Okay. Yvonne, to you now, there are a few questions that I'm going to just lump them together and, just make it one final question for you. The question is, okay, these conversations are nice, but these are not new, right? And how can we actually make a change? And then adding on to that, somebody actually mentioned, I think, somebody actually mentioned, I've never seen a vulnerable leader before. Does that even exist? What's the probability of actually having real vulnerable leaders? So again, for you, also two hats, either from iXchange provider perspective, or as a leader yourself, what do you think? How can we make this not an ongoing conversation without any action really taken? And what do you think about vulnerable leadership?
I like the topic on vulnerable leadership, right? And it's so true, right? When we say that we want to destigmatize mental health, it is really because mental health is no longer just a clinical aspect. And the clinical aspect does need to be taken care of very well. But we are now saying that mental health comes in various forms, and it can affect productivity, absenteeism, it can affect negative thoughts, which hopefully we want to capture it before it leads to something else. Leaders are equally vulnerable. So when you don't see a vulnerable leader, it could be a situation where it's not being made known, right? And I think leadership vulnerability many a times come in the word burnout. And it's being experienced by all you and me employees on the ground. So you're absolutely right that if leadership wants to walk the talk, besides coming up with a well-being initiative, it's also about sharing. It's no longer just about generating awareness. It's about letting everybody in the company know that, hey, I'm human too. I'm here with you in this journey. I've invested in well-being to make sure that, I want everybody to feel happy, they can be productive, and I can see the ROI. So initially, earlier on, we talked about the topic on KPI, right? I remember having conversations with HR way before COVID and say that we should really look into investing in certain elements of preventive health, for example. And the very first thing they always say is, it's going to cost me money, what's the ROI? Right? ROI, unfortunately, are not easily measured. It's not a year or two. You need to keep track of it, pretty much a bit on a longer period of time. Having said that, if we know that statistics have shown that, having productive employees will do good for the company, and having them happy will actually make a very positive impact on the company culture, and it does take time to change. I think this is where everybody should walk the talk, be involved in the strategy, ensure that it's part of your monthly or quarterly, management discussion, such that it's in down, in minutes, so that we know that there's real movement. And I think IHH does a very good job of it. I've seen vulnerable leaders in IHH being showcased. I've seen how they have come up with various, well-being initiatives, and I've spoken to HR there as well. It's an ongoing minuted agenda, which, they discussed, which is going to be driving the company forward. And like I said, not all companies could be investing in such a huge initiative, but I think we need to take steps so that we can move forward instead of being left behind.
Yeah, I agree. And this whole ROI thing, we need to answer to the people who are actually paying for such things, and therefore they want to know the ROI. But then again, ROI can't be all. How do you put a number to how engaged your employees are, how happy they are, their actual well-being? So I think it's really a balance that we need to have. Okay, we are about time now. I think we have a couple of seconds left. One last thing, Dr. Vanessa, one key takeaway that we should remember. 20 seconds.
Prioritize a culture of health and well-being. So if you're a culture of people, it will be health and well-being, because that's what really matters.
Thank you. And Yvonne?
For HR is to invest in a well-being initiative. And for the individual employees like you and me, it also starts with us. So bottom-up approach is the best way to go.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Yvonne. Really appreciate your time, and thank you for your partnership with Intellect.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Vanessa San and Yvonne Lu, for your insightful presentations. I think all of us enjoyed it so much, as you can see from the chat box that was blasting throughout the session itself, and for sharing your valuable perspectives, I think, on the future of corporate well-being, and for Cassandra for also moderating this wonderful session. So I think it's pretty clear from today's discussion that the future of well-being wellness lies in embracing innovative technologies, leveraging data, and also adopting holistic models that addresses multiple dimensions when it comes to health itself. By pushing the boundaries of conventional practices, we can definitely look at creating work environments that are not only about more of responsive to our employees' needs, but also more enriching and supportive as well. So we really hope that today's panel has really inspired you to think differently about corporate well-being and also explore new strategies that you can perhaps look into in enhancing your workplace culture. So this session will be actually available on demand, so feel free to revisit it or share it once it's available on the events platform and on our YouTube page. And before we wrap up, just a few more quick housekeeping notes. So our next session is a really short and interactive activity to build your personal self-care. So it'll be a really nice break for everyone, and we hope to see you there. Please head down back to your inbox to actually click on the unique join link that you see on your inbox itself. And if you are from the WOG team and you're using your work devices, we have noticed that there has been some audio firewall. So we really encourage you to join using your personal devices instead. And lastly, before we end off today's session, don't forget to actually complete the session survey that as you see right on the screen. So take out your phones to scan the QR code that you see here, or you can also click the link that has been sent to your chat box. And this will really be greatly helpful for us in improving our future events. Thank you all so much for today's discussion, and we look forward to seeing you in our next session. See you there. Bye-bye.